And you're listening to Mental Breakdown.
So we are here today. We're going to chat about trauma therapy, specifically EMDR and brain spotting. And these are things that like both you and I think are just obsessed with in general. So do you have a favorite between the two, Adia? Like what are your thoughts?
I don't think I have a favorite. I mean, I've been doing brain spotting longer. So I got like really sold on brain spotting, and then EMDR is like a little bit newer for me.
Mm-hmm.
But as I'm doing EMDR more, I also really like it. I honestly feel like EMDR is a little bit more structured. Like it's a little bit more of like a procedure and step by step, like going through the phases and stuff. And like maybe we can get into that later.
Yeah.
Of, like what it actually looks like. But so I feel like depending on the client, like I have certain clients that brain spotting works better for and certain clients that like EMDR works better for.
Yeah.
But I don't think I personally have one that I like better. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
So I got trained the opposite way. So I did EMDR first because brain spotting like was not really talked about when I got trained in EMDR. So I did EMDR in like 2008 and 2009 because we had to do like 2 weekends. So I know your training was a little bit different. And
from the fire hose.
Yeah, we didn't do that. It was like 2 3-day weekends. So like part 1 and part 2, and then we had to do all of our consultation hours in between the 2 weekends. So then once you finished like weekend 2, then you were like certified with EMDR, like able to practice.
I see.
So I did that, and then I did brain spotting in 2018, I think. And so I did it backwards. What I noticed, and I agree with everything you said, I think both are great. Like when we're talking about trauma processing therapy models, both are fantastic. Like clients cannot go wrong with EMDR or brain spotting. I do feel like it depends on what the clients are wanting to work on and how comfortable they are getting uncomfortable. Because I think the structure of EMDR gives it a little bit more time to like kind of like dip into the discomfort. Where brain spotting, it's like you're right in it. And so for me, when I did both, EMDR felt much more like logical and organizing, and brain spotting felt much more like it unpacked things that I didn't even know I had packed away. And so because EMDR is like that top down, so going from prefrontal cortex back to like spinal cord and body, and then brain spotting is like spinal cord, back of the brain, all the way up to, and like the bottom up approach. They're just two very different forms. So, so I don't know that I have a preference either. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's client dependent.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I feel like some people do better with like having a little bit more structure and like this is like what I can expect. I also feel like one thing that's like really similar to both of them is I mean, I don't know if you feel this way too, but one thing that I feel like I've noticed that's really similar to both of them is they end up kind of like going where they're going to go anyways,
sure.
but like in the brain with the processing, but I feel like brain spotting maybe gets there a little bit faster. So like with that in mind, I could see where that can be like more intense for people. If like I think EMDR, like you were talking about, like it's a little bit slower, or you can like break it down more, or like maybe start with like a smaller target than the big T trauma.
Yeah. We should probably explain what EMDR does and what brain spotting does. I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, if anybody's listening to this and they have no idea what we're talking about, we should probably do like a quick like summary.
Gibberish.
So do you want to cover what EMDR is or like the process of EMDR, or do you want me to do that? What do you think?
Whatever you want. I'll do whichever. Well, you kick us off.
Okay, so I'll do brain spotting, if that's okay. If you want to do EMDR. So, and if you're like, no, that's a horrible idea, you're fired, just...
No, that's perfect.
Okay, so do you want to go first?
You go first.
Okay. So with brain spotting, what we do as therapists, and you guys, anybody that's listening, it's going to sound completely wild what we're about to describe for both of these, but I can promise you that they both work. So with brain spotting, what we do is we find a spot in the visual field that is tied to a physiological reflex. And so we call that a brain spot. And so what we do is we will talk to a client, like let's say somebody's coming in and they're wanting to work on a trauma from their past. And so we will talk to them about the trauma, and then we are going to guide them where to look based on where they have looked before, or maybe they haven't even naturally looked at a brain spot. So then we're going to help them find their brain spot. So we typically will move from one side of the room to the other side of the room, just in terms of visual. So clients are just moving their eyes. Or we might look up, look down, look at different directions, things like that. So we'll find a brain spot. And we're always checking in with the client of like, what do you notice here? What is coming up? And so a lot of times what clients will notice is physiological responses. So like a heaviness in their chest, you know, maybe like a pit in their stomach, maybe an intense emotion. And so then with the brain spot, we have the clients just look in the brain spot, eyes open or eyes closed, eyes are just pointed at the brain spot. And then what we do is we let them just follow what's coming up, almost like listening to songs, watching a movie, watching scenery pass by. And so we have them just follow whatever's coming up. In the brain spotting sessions, the more that we as therapists talk to the client, we keep them in their prefrontal cortex, so that front part of the brain. And we really want them in the back part, where that's where the healing is going to happen. So we are more quiet in those sessions, but we will check in, like, what's coming up here? What are you noticing? And a lot of times in those sessions, we're going to have the same physiological responses that the clients do because of mirror neurons. And so we're going to be feeling that like the clients are feeling it. And so typically that's about 30 minutes of processing in a brain spot. And then we start to, you know, come out of that target of the trauma or whatever that would be. Resource, distract, get a plan, and kind of like move on. Anything that I left out that you would add in, Adia?
No, I love that.
Okay.
I feel like you covered a lot of the, like, all of the really big things. I'll add that it's not always like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, I think that is like super like client to client, where maybe some like one person has a higher like tolerance to it, because it can be, I think both of these trauma processing models can be a little bit dysregulating, like in the moment, because again, it's like bringing up a lot of stuff, a lot of emotions, like make difficult feelings, things that are uncomfortable, like you were talking about, like the physiological activation. So like a tightness in chest or like anxiety, that's not super comfortable to sit with. So like you, like a lot of times, like the therapist will always be like checking in with you. And if it's like feeling really intense, like it's not something where we'd like have you sitting in that for 30 minutes. It would be like a checking in, taking breaks, all that kind of stuff. And the client can always say, I feel really uncomfortable, or I need to take a break for a minute. And so we always tell clients, like, you're in charge of how much we do, how quickly we move. And so even when we're checking in, it's kind of that we're opening the door for, are you okay to keep going? And a lot of times what I'll say to clients is like, I would keep following that if you're okay with it. Or are you okay to keep following that? You know, are you okay to sit in that a little bit longer? So again, asking that permission of like, do you still have the bandwidth to do this? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And the fun thing about brain spotting, which I think is a little bit different than EMDR, is brain spotting, because you're going to have so many different brain spots in the visual field, there are going to be some that are going to be activation spots where the negative, like physiological responses, or like the uncomfortable physiological responses, emotions come up. But there's also resource spots that it is still a brain spot where you can tap into that trauma or that target or whatever you're wanting to process, but it doesn't feel as heavy or as loaded. And so just a different pathway to do the same work. Like a detour. Like think about a road trip, and it's like a little detour, but we're going to go to the same place, but it's going to be less uncomfortable. Yeah. And I feel like resource brain spotting is great when a client is maybe like a little bit hesitant to go into the trauma, or it's maybe like their first brain spot ever and they're just like, what do I expect? Or sometimes like I will start with like an activation brain spot, and then like towards the end switch to a more neutral resource brain spot, where it's like, you know, towards the end of session or whatever.
No, I think that's perfect. And then I always just distract with clients at the end. Like after doing all of that, I'm like, okay, tell me what you have going on this week. What are your plans for the weekend? Different things like that. Or like if I have clients that are like really into a certain like video game or TV series or book or whatever, I'm like, tell me about that. And that at least takes them out of that trauma neural network into kind of like present day. We're out of that piece.
Yeah.
And so like shutting the doors to those so like they can feel contained and good when they get done with the session.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That, I think, distracting, I do a lot of that after, or like I'll have clients like, okay, just like look around the room, take some deep breaths, maybe get some water, like shake out,
move around. Yeah.
It can be kind of like physically,
it's exhausting.
Your body holds so much.
Yeah.
So sometimes like you'll come out of it and it's like, oh, my neck, like I was actually like clenched that whole time or something, you know what I mean? So it's nice to kind of like shake out, do some grounding. So that's something like I think EMDR and Brainspotting therapists are really aware of, like this can be a dysregulating process. So there will be time, like always there will be time to like close out. So you're not like in the middle of this processing really, really deep and it's like, okay, your session's over, out the door, and you're just leaving like that.
And if you're working with a therapist that is just kicking you out while you're still activated, you should find a new therapist.
Yes. So, yes to that.
Yeah. So how would you describe EMDR for people listening that have maybe never heard about it, don't know anything about it?
Okay, let me think. So I feel like this is like a preface for maybe like Brainspotting and EMDR. One thing I usually explain to clients is like why trauma is held a little bit differently than maybe like other memories that you have or other experiences that you have. And I kind of explain it like, think of like a flood of information and like stimulus into your brain. And it's super overwhelming. Like this doesn't have to be big T traumas. This can be, growing up in an environment where there wasn't
a consistent parent,
like emotionally, a parent who showed up for you. Maybe there was like a lot of yelling, or even like
addiction.
Totally. You had to grow up really fast. Maybe there was somebody in your family who was sick and like you didn't have any like attention on you. Those are just some examples, but it's overwhelming to your nervous system and your brain. And so your brain gets and processes like bits and pieces of it. I mean, it's processing it all, but it gets processed differently. And some of it gets stored. I remember in my Brainspotting training, they described it as like little like frozen time capsules. Obviously it's like not actually that, but it's a good way to think about it. Like, and it's stored, like, this is my example brain, like close to the brains, like you were talking about. So where your brain and nervous system naturally possess the ability to process through memories and trauma and experiences, trauma can be disorienting and cause the brain filing cabinet to feel disorganized or get stuck sometimes. So that's why it can be really helpful to do this kind of deeper processing like Brainspotting or EMDR in addition to talk therapy, because you're getting you're accessing these frozen capsules of memories or emotions that have been stored deeper and held in the nervous system. That's my like preface spiel.
I love it. We should have done that first, so thank you for bringing that up.
And then EMDR, I mean, like we were saying, the goal, I think, I don't know if you would agree with this, but like the goal is the same. It's like we want to give clients relief and healing and have the ability for their bodies and brains to process these experiences the way that they're naturally able to do. EMDR and Brainspotting just kind of like gives it the tools to do that and get itself unstuck. So I love that about both of these models, because it's like it's your brain and your nervous system doing the work. It's not like this is like the tool that helps it, but it's you, which I think is really empowering.
And jumping in, sorry, really quick, it's like our bodies can do that with so many other things. So think of like the flu. For the most part, our bodies can like fight off the flu. If we get like a scratch, our bodies can heal that. with the traumas, or like those like frozen time capsules, our bodies don't know what to do with it because like it's more uncomfortable, it's bigger, and so it's like they just like freeze it over here. And then it's like, okay, well, now what? Now what do I do with that?
Right. And it's really, I think, confusing for people to hold that, because it's like not necessarily like a conscious thought all the time when you're experiencing maybe the trauma come up. Like it's not like, oh yes, I'm having this trauma come up from this thing and that's why I'm feeling this way. But you'll often feel like the physical sensation where this frozen capsule, or like your brain took a screenshot kind of, and it's like stuck in time. So yes, that's my kind of like preface spiel.
I love it.
EMDR uses a different type of processing than Brainspotting, where you're looking for that like visual point. EMDR is going to use bilateral stimulation. So you can do that with like eye movements. So either like a therapist will use their hand like this and move it back and forth, or like if you're on video, there's I can't even think of the name. Is it literally called EMDR?
Well, I use bilateralstimulation.io, and it's like this blue circle that goes back and forth. And so the bilateral stimulation is basically what it's saying is like both sides of the body. So it's alternating both sides of the body. Yeah.
So as you're watching this thing, or, you know, you can also do it like a physical, like tactile. So we use like buzzies. We'll have clients hold little like vibration pod things, and they'll just back and forth. Or, you know, doing like these
like
on
the
video.
tapping.
And just like you said, like what it does is you're activating both hemispheres of the brain. So you're kind of like turning on the communication system to work a little bit more integratively together. I don't know if that makes sense. But with EMDR, there's specific different phases. So like in an EMDR, like as you're starting it with a therapist, you'll go through, like in the beginning, you'll go through like a kind of like setting up, you know, the beginning stages of therapy are a lot of like rapport building and history gathering, and like, what are we looking at? Like, let's kind of figure out like where we want to start, and like treatment planning and stuff like that. And then once you kind of have an idea, you can get more specific about like where we want to target. And I feel like that is maybe like a little bit of a difference with EMDR and Brainspotting. EMDR, you kind of want to have a specific target going in. And
like all the information about it. Like,
And usually like you'll do more than one target. So I'll tell clients, like, if there's more than one thing, like sometimes people will get stuck with like, I don't know where to start. Sometimes I'll say like, and we talked about this in the training, like first, worst, or most recent. So is this a trauma that you have like a first memory of? Is this a trauma that you have like, it's a very active, like it's something that's like actively coming up and disturbing you often? Or is there like a really most recent time? I think you can kind of start wherever the client kind of wants to, just of course being mindful of like them being resourced going into it. So we'll usually do like I honestly take like a full session before doing EMDR to talk about things like resourcing, like container exercises and practicing like safe, calm place, which is like just grounding and tools that a client can use like in between sessions or like after sessions. Yes, I feel like I'm like really babbling. But
no, it's all great though. And like with the resourcing, that is something that an ethical, competent therapist will be doing with clients. And I think depending on the client's own resources or what they've been through, how they're showing up, there are some clients that we're going to do a lot more resourcing with and some that we're going to do less. You know, like if I have a client that's coming in that's had like a traumatic loss and they're just in it, I might not do as much resourcing with them because it's not going to make a difference. So like in that situation, I will do a little bit, then we're going to jump into like EMDR brain spotting to just like, let's just knock this out because it's there. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, it's very client to client. Once that kind of like initial process, then we move into like desensitization stage. which is where we're actually running the sets of bilaterals. So again, like whether it's fuzzy, visually, we'll do like a set chunk, like usually like 24 to like 34-ish. That's usually where like I fall. It's not something that you as the client would have to worry about. Like your therapist is tracking that. And while you're in that processing, we talk a lot about like window of tolerance. So you kind of want to, you want to have like 1 foot in the window and like 1 foot in the memory, where like you are feeling some activation, like you might be feeling some of that emotion is there. You know, maybe some of the memories are coming up for you, but you're not like 2 feet in that memory where you're feeling like you're not in the room or you're not like with your therapist still. So that's something we also talk about a lot, like before going into the process, and just give me feedback. Like I'll tell my clients like, this can be dysregulating sometimes because you're bringing up stuff that's difficult. But if you ever feel like you start dissociating a little bit, or that you're feeling like a little bit spacey, like sometimes that happens, it's totally okay. But just like let me know, and we'll pause, or we'll kind of like ground for a second before we go back in. Or slow down or whatever. And then we run the bilaterals, and what that does is it's desensitizing the activation. So the goal is relief for the person. We're kind of looking for, does their activation lessen as we're going through this process? So we rank that on like a scale. We talk about that with the client. And we basically like run the bilaterals until that activation gets to a 0. And that's something that doesn't, at least in my experience, usually happen, especially with like bigger traumas, in one session.
I've only had it happen one time, and like
in one session.
And it was, I don't even know how it happened in one session, but it's like the only time that it's happened. So
it's never happened for me where it's closed all the way to 0 in one session. So usually it like takes a couple, and I'll tell clients that too. Like there's no pressure. There is no like speed that we have to do this. And like take our time and like make sure we're like really processing through. Like don't feel rushed.
Well, and both EMDR and Brainspotting are short-term interventions. So we're talking maybe like 12 to 15 sessions per target. So just to give some of the listeners an idea, where there are some other, therapy methods that take a really long time, or this is why talk therapy doesn't always work for trauma, because it's only hitting the prefrontal cortex. So people might be in trauma therapy for like 3 years and not feel like they got to that relief point that EMDR or Brainspotting could do.
Totally. Yeah, and like relief in probably like a lot of areas, like talking through it, or like perspective taking, or like understanding it maybe differently. But that physical relief that your body is holding, I feel like really happens in these like deeper processing models. For sure. At least kind of like in what I've noticed. But so we'll go through like desensitizing the memory or the target. And then, going back and kind of checking that with the client. We talk a lot about like cognitions, like what is a belief that you maybe hold about yourself related to memory. Usually we'll like show clients like a list of them too, to kind of help, like, do any of these resonate for you? Like, what would you rather believe when you look at this memory? Like, for example, if a client's like, hey, I'm remembering this thing and I really hold the belief with this memory, like I'm not good enough. Or like I'll never be enough.
That's a popular one, or a frequent one that we EMDR or Brainspot.
Totally. And like then we'll say, what would you like rather believe? Like when you're looking back on this memory, like through this process, ideally, like what would you rather believe when you look back at this? It's like that I am enough, that I'm okay as I am. So that is kind of like the next step in EMDR of kind of like reinforcing that positive belief.
Like installing that, right? Like installing that positive belief. And we can really only do that once all the negative, like all the trauma, all of those like frozen, time capsules have been cleared. Because otherwise it's not going to install fully.
Totally. Yeah. I feel like one thing I missed, but I feel like is if you explain this in the Brainspotting too, but explaining to clients like kind of what to note it, like you're in this spot of like noticing. So I'll describe it as like this train metaphor. You're on a train looking out the window and you're like seeing memories come up, or you're like kind of noticing what you feel. You're just noticing. Don't necessarily like get off the train and like go chasing down those memories or like picking them apart. You're noticing without just judgment. Watch. It's just like, this is what comes up. And sometimes it doesn't make a ton of sense why your brain makes an association to something in the moment. It's like, times we'll say like, I have no idea why this is coming up, but like this is coming up right now. And we'll say like, go with that. Like your brain knows where it needs to go to process this thing fully. And again, like that, it already possesses that ability to do that. So this is just like we're trusting the brain. It knows where it needs to go, and let it go. And I think that's like my favorite part of like watching actually how the brain like starts processing through these things.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's so amazing.
It's so amazing.
Yeah. And I always tell clients like why I love these models is because it's not like something that we're doing to the client. We're not brainwashing them. We're not like waving a magic wand, you guys. And trust me, I wish I had these. I would like use them in my personal life all the time. Like do your homework or go to bed or whatever, you know. But it's not that. It's really us like giving resources to the clients for them to organically heal themselves.
Totally.
And once they're healed, it's healed forever for both of these, unless there's a new trauma to that trauma network. So like the example I use is, and there's a lot of research on EMDR with PTSD, just because EMDR has been around since like, I mean, the 1980s. So there's a lot of research on that. And especially with like people who have been in active like war zones or active duty, you know, they will get PTSD if they come back and do EMDR. PTSD will clear. However, if they go back to combat, PTSD is going to come back. It's not going to just like prevent it from happening again if there's a trauma. Mm-hmm. But like for, I think people who are not in those like extreme conditions, typically it's like they do the EMDR or the Brainspotting and it's healed forever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally. And I mean, I feel like, and I might be off here, it's not necessarily that, like this is something I'll usually say too. It's not that like this memory is going to be altered or like deleted. So like objectively, something that is like, say you get in like a really terrible car accident and that's really true for you. Yeah. After EMDR, it's not like you're ever going to like look back on this and be like, that's a great memory now, but it's not going to be like objectively, like these are still bad memories, if that makes sense. Like it's objectively like still not a great memory. It's just that the activation around it is clear and gone. So like when you're looking back on this, where like maybe in the past or maybe when you go get into a car, you're having this like full body reaction, you can do that without having any of that. Yeah. Where it's like, objectively this memory, like getting in that car accident sucked, but it doesn't feel like it did. Yeah. It feels manageable. It feels like I can hold this. Like I'm not having the anxiety or the activation or whatever. So I can give an example if that would be helpful. So back in my like independently licensed days, I worked at a residential facility. Not a great place. I'm glad it's not around anymore. I really love working with the kids. I did not like the way that the organization was just focused on money and all that stuff. But anyways, so in residential therapy, we got bumped around a lot. So like I would be on like the guys unit, or it was all adolescents. So I'd be on like the teen boys unit. Then I would be on like the female unit. Then I was working with sex offenders. And then like one of the therapists left. So I was working with sex offenders and females. And so I remember there was one girl that I did an intake for. And I think like within the week, she like got pissed off at me and she attacked me. And so I remember, and luckily I was smart enough to have one of like a big BHT, a behavioral health tech in the room to like, because I just had this gut feeling. I'm like, this is not going to go well. And I do not want to be in a room alone with this girl who was like twice my size. And so she hit me a couple times, and then they basically removed her from my office. And I remember like going back to work the next day and feeling that physiological. And I was like, I'm fine. It's fine. Like she's not on my caseload anymore. I don't have to see her.
until I got another client who basically came to us because she got kicked out of her last treatment place because she attacked her therapist. And I had a full body response to that. And so I told my supervisor at the time, he's like, I will take off your caseload, but like you need to do something about your trauma. And so I did EMDR with a colleague, and it's like I can still remember it. Like clearly I'm talking about it now. I'm not activated about it. It's actually like looking back, I'm like, all right, like that was an experience and I'm glad I don't work there anymore. But I remember going through it and starting like, I'm a bad therapist. I did something wrong. I should have known better. All those negative beliefs that you were talking about. And then through like the desensitization and reprocessing, I got to the point of like, I actually got off pretty easy because the therapist that got her from my caseload had to deal with so much more stuff because this girl was getting into fights like every day. That meant paperwork, that meant more meetings, that meant like just extra work for the therapist. And so now I can talk about it and I don't feel it. It's still there. It's not my like most favorite memory ever, but it's not charged. It's not activated. Interestingly enough, after that happened, I got a lot of street cred on the unit. They're like, oh my gosh, did you kick her ass? And I'm like, I'm half her size. No, I didn't kick her ass. Like, no, like, who do you know who you're talking to? But people are like, oh, like Minon, like, ugh. And I was like, I don't even know who you are. Like, we've never had a conversation before. So, yeah.
You became famous.
A famous punching bag, but that's fine. Like,
I also like love that your supervisor was like, okay, you trust, like, we're not having you in this situation where you're like getting activated and like taking off your caseload, and let's address the trauma.
I mean, that's the only good thing he did as a supervisor, but yes. But I mean, but I'm glad that he pushed me in that because I don't know that I would have done that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, my stubborn ass is like, I'm fine, like, it'll be fine. I can take care of it myself. Hi, hyper independent child growing up. So I'm glad that that was pushed. But that's kind of that example for anybody listening of, like you said, it's not like it erases the memory. It doesn't change it. It's not like it's changing details of like, oh, we went in the office and we had ice cream and it was a great time. It's like, no, this is what it is. There's just no feeling connected to it.
Yeah. So that totally is that's like a perfect example to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of like makes me think of another point that I feel like is probably not going to happen like super often, but something to kind of like consider that we talked about like in EMDR training was if you are like in the process of legal court stuff where like you have to like stand on the witness stand and like describe your story, we like as the therapist should also like let you know of these things and just kind of like things to keep in mind of like the goal is to get that activation to zero. So like where maybe you'd be on a witness stand and like the emotional response of
just
whatever
isn't there
is like emotional and crying and like you can really like see that it's not going to be there. So that's something to just kind of consider, like if you're in the middle of like court proceedings or legal stuff or you have to go on a stand, to just like consult with your lawyers, consult with your therapist, like have a conversation about like is like when the right time is for you.
And I think going off of that, sign a release of information so that your therapist can talk to your legal representative or caregivers or whoever to talk about like, what am I allowed to do? And, you know, if we do EMDR brain spotting, is that going to help or hurt their case? Because sometimes we will be told like, do not touch the trauma until this court hearing is over. We don't get a lot of court clients or that are going through legal kind of like battles or things like that, not at least in our practice, but it isn't unheard of. And so that is something I think it's a great reminder for people to know about. I also think if they're like in the trauma, like I think of like firefighters or public safety, we can do EMDR brain spotting, but they're going right back into a traumatic environment. So it's like, it might be like a release valve, and then we have to keep doing that. And then once they're done with that job, then we can do a lot of the deeper processing too.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because it's like like you were talking about that earlier with like if you're going back into a situation that's gonna like you trigger re-traumatize. It doesn't mean like we shouldn't do it. It can still be like really helpful, really healing. Maybe there's like a little bit more resourcing happening where it's like, okay, can we like install some like confidence and things that help going back into that situation? Like I think like future templating kind of stuff.
For sure. And I usually describe it to people overflow, but at least you're not even more overflowing or even more maxed out or burnt out. So yeah. So that's EMDR and Brainspotting for everybody listening. Is there any client that you would not recommend EMDR or Brainspotting for? Like any presenting concern, anything like that?
It's tricky because I feel like you could do EMDR and Brainspotting with, so say that there's like, okay, I guess one thing that kind of comes to my mind is like, if you know a client is like currently in a situation that is something that's causing them the trauma. So like say that they're living with somebody who is like their abuser.
Yeah.
Or they're living with somebody who they grew up with and it was like a very like non-emotionally safe environment. I think that could be really tricky, and I would say like proceed with caution because it is a dysregulating experience for people sometimes. And then if you're like, okay, we can't close this to 0 in one session and then
you're going back home.
Then you're going back home with this person. Is that safe? Like, are you safe to like go through that level of trauma processing when you're in an environment like that? I would say that's where I would like really hold caution. And maybe that's not like don't do it at all. Maybe that's like, can we do it on different targets where it's like maybe that's like symptom relief for depression, or you know, EMDRing or Brainspotting, like advocating for yourself more. And like in different areas outside of this trauma. I don't even know if I'm explaining that well.
No, that makes sense. So you're talking about like kind of like the external things that connect to the trauma but aren't the actual, like we're not going to focus on the abuse, but we might focus on resourcing, healthy coping skills, confidence, like boundaries, things like that that tie to it but aren't it.
I think also like if you do an EMDR target with a client, and like we talk about this in the training a little bit, doing like a practice target. I don't know that I always do that, again, because like sometimes clients are like, this is the thing, like I really want relief, like can we just into it, where I'm not going to maybe like spend session after session going into something that's like really not that important for them. But if I am doing that and like in a smaller practice target, it's like extremely activating for them and like their window of tolerance is just like non-existent. I would probably hold off on like Brainspotting and EMDR for a while until we do some like talk therapy and foundational stuff and resourcing. I don't know.
Well, and I think too, like active addiction, active self-harm, you know, suicidal like thoughts, like attempts, plans, things like that. I don't know that it could never be done, but I think you would have to find a therapist that really specializes in either like addiction or even like that high acuity. And so having somebody that can do all the resourcing and safety planning and the trauma work. And typically those clients are going to be probably in like a residential facility, an IOP, something like that, where it's like they're there for a period of time. So it's like, let's get a lot done, knowing that you're safe. And we don't get a lot of those either, at least in our practice. But I think if anybody is listening and is having like suicidal ideation, call or text 988. You know, there's help out there, but it's not like you can't do the work to heal either.
Totally.
And a lot of times with addiction, it's not just somebody is an addict because they want to be an addict. It's that underlying trauma and pain. Gabor Mate, who I call my boyfriend because he's so cute, he talks about it all the time. He's like, we don't treat the addiction, we treat the pain.
I like the way that he talks about it because it's not like pathologizing
not at all
the person and like it's like, okay, what? Yeah, treat the pain. What is, because really it is like a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Like, we can say it's not the healthiest, most effective, but it is. That's what it is.
Right.
Like, people are using it to escape.
Yeah. I just love him so much.
Gabor Mate is her boyfriend, and Ice Cube, by the way.
Yes, Ice Cube's my husband. Gabor Mate is my boyfriend. So if anybody's tracking, I have a diverse interest in these men. I am married, so my husband is aware of both of these.
When you said that.
On my Spotify year in rap side note, Ice Cube was like my top performer, and I was in like the 0.02% of his listeners. I was like one step closer. Anyways.
Look at you.
I know. One day. Both are also happily married, I believe. Gabor Mate is like 80 and like has been with his wife forever, and Ice Cube I think has been with his wife forever. So I'm not going to be a home wrecker over here. I just like to like live in fantasy every once in a while, you guys. So.
But Gabor Mate, like, side note, great recommendation. He has like such good stuff. Like, all of his talks, I have not watched one where I like am not. Yeah. He's
so good
about things. I feel like is different, and go listen to his stuff.
Well, and I think he's a double doctor. Like, I think he's an MD and a psychiatrist, and so when he's talking about like addiction and trauma, he is talking about it from a very like biological standpoint, but also a psychological standpoint. So he has a really good job. He does a really good job of kind of like integrating both of those and explaining like the root of it. And his voice is just so calming. Like, I could just listen to him forever. And he just like oozes all of his knowledge. Like, it just like comes out of him in such a beautiful way that I'm like, oh, I just want all of that.
Yeah, we're big fans over here.
Clearly, I'm like fangirling, you know.
Oh, I am too.
Yeah.
I feel like there was something I was going to say that kind of left my mind.
I know.
Oh, this is not about Gabor Mate, but this is a Brainspotting EMDR like side note that I feel like is important to both of them, and why I think these trauma models are also different than different than talk therapy, in you can get the healing and the processing without explaining and talking and
thank you.
Like every detail and part of this trauma, where it's like there's brain spotting sessions that I've had where like, because it's not about us as the therapist, like I don't need to know all, like, yes, we're gonna have check-ins, yes, I need feedback, but like you don't have to describe to me every detail of your trauma to get the healing and the relief. And I feel like that is like a really key special part of both of these things.
No, I love that you said that, because I think that can also help us determine like which model to use for clients. Like, if we have a client that's like, I don't want to chat a whole lot about it, like I can give you kind of like summary of what happened, but I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty details, then that might be more of a brain spotting session. Or sometimes like with teens, I find that they like EMDR, because even when we check in, like in between those bilateral sets, we just need like, where are you at now? And so that can be like, it's in my chest, I feel angry, I have a pit in my stomach, it's still in my chest, whatever that is. It's like, we're just checking in to make sure that you're not off the train. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes clients really like that. And because brain spotting was developed from EMDR, they're interchangeable, where I've had sessions that I've started off as EMDR and then we move to brain spotting like halfway through. So.
Oh, I like that. I've never done that where it's like in the same session. I have had clients where like we've started with brain spotting and they're like, we kind of are like, maybe like just giving the client, like it would be better to have something like a little bit more structured, and we've like switched in separate session. But no, I love that you said that. And I love that you said like those little check-in points don't have to, like, you don't have to give us every single thing.
We don't want every single thing, because we want you to keep processing.
Totally. And like, that's, I think, I'm kind of curious your thoughts on this, because I kind of go back and forth where it's like, I don't ever want to like, so in those little check-ins where like we run a set of bilaterals, and then it's like, okay, what are you noticing? Like, that's usually the question I ask. What are you noticing? What's coming up in that set? Clients will give like you know, like you were saying, I kind of feel this, or like I had this random memory come up, we'll usually just be like, okay, notice that, go with that.
Yeah.
Like, and then send them right back into the bilaterals. Because again, like keeping that processing going. I do think sometimes, and I'm curious your thoughts, a client, like certain clients, maybe they're like talking about it for the first time with somebody, or like they're needing
and then
that.
They need to.
Yeah. And then I'll like, then it's like, do what feels right for you. And like I preface that to clients like before we even start.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be super rigid. Like if you want to tell me more, if you want to tell me less, like go for it. Like yes, the goal is like we want you in that like bilateral set probably as much as possible. But if you are like, I really want to tell you this and like I want to process this out and talk about it a little bit, go for it. Like I just let clients do that if that's what they need.
Well, and I think that speaks to that rapport building and that attunement that we should have with our clients. So we're going to know if it's a client that needs that space to tell us a little bit more, or if it's somebody who is like avoiding, or, you know, maybe doesn't know what they're supposed to be doing, so they're rambling a little bit. And so we're going to have that connection with the client to be able to show up in the way that they need us to show up in that session. And I think we have similar styles in that way, where we might just have the conversation with the client. Like, is it helpful to tell me all that? Or would it be more helpful for you to tell me a little bit and then jump back in? Like, what are you thinking? What are you needing? And so it is a very collaborative process. So.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll like usually after the first time, like that next session, before we do anything, I'll be like, how was that for you?
Yeah.
What did you like? What did you not like? Like, what was that time like in between session? Do you feel like you were able to like regulate yourself? Did you like the amount that I was checking in? Do you want me to check in more? Like, we can, we want to show up for you in the way that you need. Like, I would hate for a client to be like, you know, because it is a little bit different than talk therapy, where like you said, like you're not, especially in like brain spotting, where you're not necessarily like pulling them out of it, like in EMDR and like having those like specific check-ins. It can be a chunk of time where we're not thinking, and that can be uncomfortable for people if they're not used to it. Yeah. So just know, as a client, you can always ask like more check-ins, less check-ins, like that's important feedback.
For sure. And so I'm going to say a couple last things before we have to wrap up, but I think a couple disclaimers for both, and I think we've talked about it. It is really emotionally draining. So a lot of times clients will report just feeling tired, like emotionally tired, like almost like you did like an intense workout for your soul and your nervous system. So I always recommend that clients, if they're starting EMDR or brain spotting, like plan it so that you can have a chill rest of the day. Like you don't have to run around and do like all of these like errands or like a work presentation or things like that, where you can just go home and like do whatever you need to do, right? I tend to ask clients to do back-to-back weeks when they start, at least for the first 2, because we're opening things up. And so I'm like, I don't want to be like, hey, good luck, peace out, I'll see you in 3 weeks, hope you're doing well after processing. So I'll ask that they come back in, and then also like, okay, here's how I would talk to your family about it, or your partner, or your roommate, or, you know, like a close friend, in case you need somebody in between. And you can always reach out to us and like message us and things like that. So that's usually what I tell clients. Usually by like the 3rd, 4th session, clients are like, I know what to do after this. Like, I'm going to be, you know, tired, but like I can function and it's totally fine. So, and I will say my last thing is everybody at our practice is trained in EMDR and EMDR or brain spotting or both. So like you're trained in both, I'm trained in both, Lucy's trained in both. Chantal has brain spotting training. Darcy has EMDR training. Chantal will be EMDR trained at the beginning of the year. So this is something that as a practice we are really passionate about, with helping people heal. So if you're looking for trauma therapy, we all do it.
I love it.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would add that I didn't just like ramble off at the very end?
No, I'm glad that you touched on like the self-care piece of it. That's something I'll tell clients. Like it can be, like we said, more tiring than you think. Like it's like a literal workout for you. I like that you said nervous system and soul workout.
It is. It totally is.
And I think every client is a little bit different. Like I've had clients that like leave an EMDR session and they're like, oh, I feel like great. Like I feel lighter. Like I feel ready for the day. And people that are like, I'm like gonna go cry and like sleep and drink water. So there's no right or wrong. It's just like our bodies are all different. Our processing is all different.
And we're gonna prepare you for like not the worst. I don't want to say it's the worst, but you know, we're going to prepare you for the response that could be the most kind of like intrusive, right? Of like feeling depleted, feeling worn out, feeling raw. Like I would much rather have you be prepared for that and that not be your story or your experience than us not prepare you for it and you're like, what the heck? Like why didn't you tell me that this was going to happen?
Totally.
So I'm glad we got to chat about this today. If you guys are listening and you guys have any specific questions about EMDR or brain spotting or trauma or about anything else therapy related, feel free to let us know. Like you can send it in the comments or send us a message because we would love to be able to just answer some of that on the next podcast. So